In this episode, I'll be reading Chapter 3 of the Trust Premium book. This chapter discusses the purchase decision and beyond. Customers make purchase decisions based on the perceived value and perceived price of the product or service that you're selling them. Their trust in you depends on the relationship between the perceived and actual price and between the perceived and actual value. Their post-purchase trust determines their loyalty in ongoing relationships and their willingness to provide outbound transferrable trust, which becomes the inbound transferrable trust to your next customer, which plays a major role in their purchase decision, closing the cycle. I will discuss this in detail with examples and research findings right after this. Welcome to The Trust Show. I'm Yoram Solomon, your host, the author of the Book of Trust and facilitator of the Trust Habits Workshop. My mission is simple. I want to help you form habits that build your trustworthiness, because the answer to this question will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? Chapter 3: The Purchase Decision and Beyond. The customer makes a purchase decision based on a simple criterion. The value they get is higher than the price you are asking for. More specifically, the value they get is higher than the value they attribute to the amount of money represented in the price that you're asking for. In other words, compared to what else they can buy with the same amount of money. That's it. There's no rocket science in here. If you ask for a higher price than your competitor and offer the same value, the customer will buy from them. If you provide less value than what your competitor is asking, but you're asking for the same price, the customer will again buy from them. But if you offer a higher value for the same price, or ask for a lower price for the same value, the customer will buy from you. The purchase decision is simply an economic one, with one caveat. Customers also believe that you get what you paid for. If your price is dramatically lower, the customer will assume that there is less value. How often did you pay more for a product believing you will get a higher value? The other two maxims that also come to play: there is no such thing as a free lunch, and if something is too good to be true, it probably isn't true. More on those maxims will be discussed in the next chapter. But it's important to understand that when the customer makes the purchase decision, it is based on the perceived value and the perceived price. In other words, it is based on the value they believe they will be getting and the price they believe they will end up paying. Customers buy from you because they believe the value they perceive to be getting is higher than the price they believe they are paying. After the purchase, and sometimes long after the purchase, they realize what the actual value is and what the actual price is. And sometimes those are not the same. This always reminds me of the word of Jessie J in the song Price Tag, when the sales comes first and the truth comes second. Here are a few examples. Total cost of ownership. One day, my younger daughter, Shira, decided she didn't want to run to my office whenever she wanted to print something. She wanted to have her own printer in her room. She searched online and found the printer for just over $60. What a deal! The perceived price was $60. That's what Shira believed it would cost her, not just to own a printer, but to print whatever she wanted. She bought the printer and was happy with her bargain, but then, one day, the printer displayed a message indicating it was low on ink. Shira looked up the cost of replacement ink cartridges and was shocked to discover how expensive they were. That's when she realized the actual price of printing was far higher than the $60 she initially paid for the printer. Many of us with more experience know that the cost of an inkjet printer is only part of the total cost. Shira didn't know that. She does now. This is a classic example of total cost of ownership, a concept that goes beyond the purchase price to account for all costs a customer incur while using a product or service. In Shira's case, the printer itself was cheap, but the ongoing cost of ink cartridges significantly increased the actual price of printing. Sellers who fail to inform customers of these additional costs risk causing frustration and resentment. Customers often feel duped when they discover that the total cost is far higher than the perceived price. Even though these additional expenses may not go to the same seller as revenue, they are still part of the customer's overall expenditure and influence their satisfaction with the purchase. When sellers obscure these costs, they may win the initial sale but lose long-term trust and loyalty as customers feel misled about the actual cost of ownership when they realize that the actual price is higher than the perceived price. The hidden cost of switching. Switching costs, one of the often overlooked hidden costs, can significantly impact a customer's decision-making process and satisfaction with a product or service. These costs arise when adopting a new product or service requiring the customer to change from their current solution, often incurring additional expenses in time, effort, or money. Imagine you're using a particular software tool for your business and you're tempted to switch to a newer, cheaper option. While the advertised price of the new software seems attractive, switching may require time-consuming data migration, retraining your staff, or losing access to integrations with other tools you currently use. Similarly, buying a new smart home device might require replacing existing gadgets that are incompatible or investing in a new ecosystem of products to make everything work seamlessly. Even something as simple as switching to a new hair care brand can come with hidden costs if the new products react poorly with your hair, leading you to invest in additional treatments to fix the damage. These switching costs can create a gap between the perceived price of adopting the new product or service and its actual cost. Sellers who fail to address these hidden costs risk frustrating customers who may feel misled or unprepared for the transition. On the other hand, sellers who acknowledge and minimize switching costs through compatibility, support, or incentives can gain a significant trust advantage. Switching costs often go unnoticed during the initial purchase decision, but they can deeply influence post-purchase trust and loyalty. By recognizing and addressing these hidden barriers, sellers can ensure that customers feel confident in their choices and supported throughout the transition. Bait and switch, price anchoring, and upselling. Have you ever tried to buy a car for the advertised price? You see a TV commercial for a new car. The ad specifically states that you will be paying $299 a month. You go to the dealership and ask for that car. When you ask them to calculate the monthly payments, they end up being $435 a month. Wait a minute. The TV ad said $299. The salesperson explains that the car in front of you has a few accessories that the car in the ad didn't have. So you ask for the car exactly like the one in the ad, without the extra accessories. You don't need them anyway. But such a car doesn't exist. While the perceived price was $299, the actual price was $435. This is a classic example of bait and switch pricing and price anchoring with upselling. Bait and switch occurs when an attractively low price is advertised to draw customers in, but the actual product at that price is either unavailable or unattainable, forcing the customer to consider higher priced options. In this case, the dealership anchors the customer with the promise of a $299 monthly payment, only to reveal that the advertised version is unavailable. The customer is then steered towards a more expensive option that includes additional features or accessories, effectively engaging in upselling while undermining trust. Consider another example. Imagine spending 20 minutes taking a detailed Enneagram personality test online. The website doesn't ask for money up front or mention that there is a charge for the results. It feels like a seamless experience until you finish the test and are informed that you must pay to see the results. By the time this revelation comes, you're invested in a captive audience. You feel manipulated because your effort and time were used as leverage to extract payment. Similarly, think about free trial periods that require your credit card information up front. These trials are often designed to bank on forgetfulness, automatically charging your card once the trial ends. Canceling the trial can involve navigating a maze of cumbersome steps, making it deliberately difficult to opt out. While these companies might consider such practices standard, they erode trust by relying on coercive tactics rather than transparency and consent. These manipulation practices are tempting for some businesses because they can yield short-term revenue. However, the damage they do to trust can be irreparable. Customers who feel deceived are unlikely to return and are even more likely to share their negative experiences, harming long-term brand reputation and success. The hidden price beyond money. Imagine considering an online course promising to teach you a valuable skill. The price is $499 and the seller claims you'll need just 5 hours a week for 4 weeks to complete it. Excited by the offer, you enroll, believing the total cost will be $499 and 20 hours of your time. But as you dive into the course, you realize the workload is far greater. Instead of 5 hours a week, you're spending closer to 10. You're also expected to buy additional materials like books and software that weren't mentioned up front. Suddenly, the total cost includes far more than $499. It includes dozens of extra hours and unexpected purchases, all of which raise the actual price far beyond what you initially perceived. This illustrates a key phenomenon. Price isn't always about money. Customers often pay with other valuable resources such as their time, energy, and attention. Time is one of the most precious commodities. Once spent, it can't be recovered. Energy, both mental and physical, can also be a cost when engaging in a product or service that demands significant effort. Attention is another resource, particularly in today's overstimulated world where focusing on one task means foregoing others. Sellers who downplay these additional requirements create a misleading perceived price, leaving customers feeling frustrated and resentful when they discover the true cost. When the actual demands are higher than promised, the perceived price becomes a deceptive lure, and the actual price, including these hidden non-monetary costs, can erode trust. Customers may feel tricked into investing far more than they were initially led to believe, which can damage their relationship and deter future transactions. For sellers, transparency about all costs, monetary and otherwise, is crucial to maintain trust and ensure customer satisfaction. When the actual price is lower than the perceived price. While it's more common to encounter situations where the actual price is higher than the perceived price, there are rare but delightful instances where the opposite occurs. The actual price ends up being lower than what the customer expected. Imagine walking into a store to purchase a jacket advertised at $120 only to discover at checkout that there was an unadvertised coupon bringing the price down to $90. Or consider buying material for a home project expecting the work to take 10 hours but finishing in just 6, saving both time and effort. Similarly, a customer purchasing multiple items might unexpectedly receive a volume discount, reducing their total cost. These pleasant surprises not only create immediate customer satisfaction, but also strengthen post-purchase trust. When customers feel that they paid less than anticipated, they perceive the seller as honest, generous, and transparent, fostering a positive relationship. Unlike scenarios where hidden costs erode trust, these moments of unexpected savings build loyalty and goodwill, enhancing the customer's belief that the seller has their best interests at heart. Though such instances may be rare, they highlight the powerful role pricing dynamics play in shaping trust. When the actual price is lower than the perceived price, post-purchase trust increases, as does loyalty and outbound transferrable trust. The actual value. The same happens with value. Sometimes you buy something to find out that the value you thought it offered, the perceived value, was higher than the value you got, the actual value. And sometimes it's the opposite. Often it comes down to customer service and the support that you get after the purchase. Have you ever tried to get a new internet service provider? They advertise the price of $40 a month and 1 gigabit per second speed. Once you get the service, you realize that the 1 gigabit per second speed is the maximum, but it's not guaranteed, not the average, and typically less. And there are caps if you use it too much. Then, in the second year of service, you realize the price increased to $60 a month. How come? You probably missed the small print when you initially signed up, which stated that the $40 a month is an introductory price only for the first year. To appear more professional, I decided to buy customized apparel with my logo embroidered on it. After some research, I found a firm, Queensboro, that was the most flexible in their minimum order quantities and the variety of what I could order in a single order. I had no references or recommendations from people I know and didn't know the brand or its reputation, but I checked its online reputation on a website dedicated to that, trustpilot.com. They had over 26,000 reviews and the average score was 4.9 out of 5. Being the suspicious kind that I am, if there were only 20 reviews, I would have imagined them being sponsored. But not 26,000 reviews. Plus, what's the worst thing that can happen when I place a $75 order? So, I placed the first order and got my shirt. I was delighted. After a while, I placed another order. Shirts, baseball caps, vests, and more. Then I placed more orders. Until that point, everything I ordered met my expectations. The actual value was exactly what I expected, and the actual price was exactly what I had expected before I purchased it. So far, so good. And then it happened. I placed an order that included 2 10 dress shirts with my logo. The shirts arrived, but they weren't the same color or material I expected them to be. I went back to my order to check what I ordered, only to find that I got exactly what I ordered and that it was my fault for not paying enough attention to the fabric and the color. It wasn't Queensboro's fault. Like after every order I placed with them, I received an email asking me how my order was. I had to choose between 2 options: perfect and not perfect. I struggled with that one. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't their fault. I ended up clicking not perfect. I don't think it took even an hour before I got a phone call from Queensboro. The lady on the other side asked me what was the problem with the order. I explained to her that the color and fabric were not what I thought I had ordered, although they were exactly what I did order. The lady on the other side said they would reimburse me for the order and that I could keep the shirts. I explained to her that it wasn't their fault. It was my fault. Plus, the shirts weren't bad, and I fully intended to wear them. She wouldn't listen. I found myself in a weird argument where she told me they would reimburse me and I'm asking her not to. Well, they reimbursed me. That was the moment the actual value exceeded the perceived value. It was through their customer service. I can even argue that the actual price was lower than the perceived price because I didn't expect the shirts to be free. Queensboro won my loyalty that day. I have told this story many times in keynotes, social media posts, and now in this book. I recommended Queensboro to everyone I know who needs customized apparel. When discussing being a trusted salesperson, we often focus on being trusted before the purchase decisions are made. The concept of trust preference and trust premium, more on those in the next chapter, apply when the customer makes a purchase decision, prefers you over the competition, and is even willing to pay you a higher price or fee because they trust you. Outbound transferrable trust. Trust in a sales relationship. Not all sales are transactional. Not all sales end with a single purchase. Even when you buy a car, you may want to return to the same dealership where you purchased your previous vehicle unless you want a car brand that the dealership doesn't carry. If you are a service professional, say a dentist, you want the customers to return in the future. It's not enough that they came to you for one treatment. You want them to come to you for future treatments. Some relationships are ongoing, such as with a financial advisor, insurance agent, dentist, consultant, or coach, and you want those relationships to continue. You must keep the trust preference and trust premium high such that you will not lose a customer for a competitor who is offering a lower price. And the higher the trust your customers have in you, the lower the probability that this will happen, and the deeper the discount your competitors will have to offer. If you give your customers reasons to distrust you or not give them reasons to trust you, they will leave you. This is pretty simple to understand. Trust in transactional sales. There is another consideration, though. In the second part of this book, I will talk about the fifth law of trust, transferrable trust. And you will see that a significant component in the customer's initial trust in you, which affects their initial purchase or engagement decision with you, depends significantly on such transferrable trust. This transferrable trust is conveyed to your prospective customers through online reviews or ratings by previous customers, recommendations made by them to people they trust, previous customers' willingness to be good references for you, even to those who don't know them, and the reputation you build over time as described by your previous customers. In my study, all four ranked between I am more likely to hire them and I'm much more likely to hire them. So, even if your business relies on single, standalone transactions where you never expect to see the same customer again, the trust preference and trust premium by a new customer depend on your existing customers' willingness to post positive reviews or ratings, provide positive recommendations to people who know and trust them, be references to prospective customers you refer to them, and over time create a positive reputation for you. You don't create your own reputation. Your previous customers, in the aggregate, do. As a very famous astronaut, Jeff Bezos, once said, "Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room." The outbound transferrable trust, the willingness of an existing customer to post a positive review, recommend you to someone who trusts them, be a reference to you, or overall contribute to a positive reputation of yours, stems from the relationship between the perceived price and the actual price, as well as the relationship between the perceived value and the actual value. While the perceived price and perceived value are known at the time of the purchase decision, actually, the customer thinks they're known to them, hence why I call them perceived price and value. The actual price and value are found out later, only after the purchase decision is made. Sometimes a long time after that, does the customer realize the actual price and value. The relationships between those dictate the level of trust the customer has in the salesperson or professional after the purchase is made. The relationship between the perceived and actual price is as follows. Imagine a line in which the actual price is equal to the perceived price. You meet the price perceptions. No more nor less. Now imagine the area below the line. That's the area in which the actual price is lower than the perceived price. That's a positive surprise to the customer and increases their trust in you. If the gap is too high, though, the customer might fall into the "you get what you paid for," "there is no such thing as a free lunch," or "if something is too good to be true, it probably isn't true." See more on that in the next chapter. However, this happens after the purchase is made, when the customer will accurately assess the value they get in return. The area above the line, the red area, is where, after the purchase, the customer realized that the actual price is higher than the perceived price. That's a bad surprise to the customer and reduces the trust in you. The relationship between the perceived and actual value is opposite. If the actual value is higher than the perceived value, the customer realizes they are getting more value than they thought they were getting and thus increase their trust in you. And when the actual value is lower than the perceived value, the customer realizes they are getting less value than they thought they were going to get, and they lose trust in you. In a perfect, neutral world, the actual price is the same as the perceived price, and the actual value is the same as the perceived value. In other words, the customer pays exactly what they thought they would pay and get exactly the same value they thought they would get. But in reality, those numbers are often different. The bigger the gap, the deeper we get into the zone of high or low trust. Click-wrap agreements, the long agreements written in legalese that you skip and only click the accept to get a new service or purchase a product, small print, and rapid disclaimers at the end of commercials are staples of modern sales practices. These tools are designed to protect the seller by ensuring that customers legally agree to terms, often terms they have not read or fully understood. While these practices might satisfy legal disclosure requirements, they often create a gap between the customer's perceived value or price and the actual terms of that deal. The same happens when a product is advertised with bold performance claims or a low price. The fine print, however, reveals restrictive conditions or hidden fees that significantly alter the reality of the offer. A TV commercial might display a tempting monthly price in large type, while the small print clarified that it's a limited time promotion requiring a long-term commitment. Similarly, a fast-talking disclaimer may obscure the real costs or limitations of a product, leaving customers unaware of what they're truly agreeing to. The result is a mismatch. The perceived value or price at the moment of purchase is not what the customer ultimately experiences. A service promoted as free might come with mandatory fees, or a product might not perform as promised under the average customer's circumstances. The small print might technically justify the disparity, but that does little to mitigate the frustration or sense of betrayal when the customer discovers the difference. These practices exploit the customer's assumption that the prominent details in an offer are the most relevant ones. While they may lead to immediate sales, they often leave customers feeling misled when the full reality comes to light. The short-term gains achieved through these tactics come at the cost of long-term credibility and customer satisfaction, and thus low trust. It all comes together. Let's put it all together in a single picture. Before the customer makes a purchase decision, they research you. I will describe the components of the relative trust model that the customer uses to determine whether they can trust you in part 2. And rely heavily on inbound transferrable trust through recommendations by people they know and trust, online reviews or ratings, references you provide them with, and your overall reputation built over time. That sets the trust level for the beginning of the selling interaction. Together, the research, the inbound transferrable trust, and your pre-purchase behavior determine the pre-purchase trust that the customer has in you. That is a part, some might say a very significant part, of the value that the customer sees in your product or service. The product features and performance provide the other part of the value. In some contexts, trust might play an even more important role in the overall value that the customer sees in your product than the product itself. That's what the whole trust premium research is about. When I find that a customer is willing to pay 40% higher price for the same product or service when they purchase it from a trusted salesperson or professional, I'm saying that the pre-purchase value is that extra 40% or 28.5% of the overall perceived value. However, when I found that the trust premium was higher than 100%, it meant that the value of trust was more than 50% of the overall perceived value that the customer considered when making the purchase decision. The perceived value and perceived price together influence the purchase decision. That decision, as I described before, is very simple. The customer buys when the perceived value is higher than the perceived price. But the game is not over after the purchase. Customers will determine your post-purchase trustworthiness and their post-purchase trust in you based on the relationships between the actual price and the perceived price and between the actual value and the perceived value. Once again, your trustworthiness plays a significant role in the actual value. If the relationship is ongoing, such as with a financial advisor, a lawyer, a consultant, a coach, and the like, its continuation heavily depends on the post-purchase trust. But even if the relationship is one-time transactional, such as buying a product you will never need a second, your post-purchase trustworthiness will dictate the customer's willingness to recommend you to people who trust them, to post positive reviews or ratings, and to serve as a reference for you for new customers you refer to them. All components of the outbound transferrable trust, thus closing the cycle. You see, in the strong presence of transferrable trust, even in a one-time transaction, the post-purchase value, which includes trust, your trustworthy behavior, is critical after the purchase is made. The outbound transferrable trust by an existing customer becomes the inbound transferrable trust of your next customer. Spend some time internalizing this. It's important. It sets the stage for why it is so important to be trustworthy before and after the sale and before I share my findings of the trust preference and trust premium. What does my research say about the importance of inbound and outbound transferrable trust? With 95% confidence based on a sample of 313 participants, you can see that all four components of inbound transferrable trust have relatively the same importance level. Slightly above, I'm more likely to use the provider that has this specific component, with the components being online reviews, company reputations, recommendations, or references provided by the provider. The company's reputation and references were the top ones, but the other two did not fall far behind. As far as the willingness to provide outbound transferable trust, a recommendation, an online review, or to be a reference at the request of the provider, you can see that with 95% confidence based on a sample of 100 participants, customers were between likely and very likely to provide those components of outbound transferable trust if they worked with the provider for more than a year and the provider kept every promises they made. The participants were a little more likely to be willing to recommend the provider to someone they know who trusts them or to be a reference at the provider's request, and a little less likely to provide an online review, but in all three cases, they were between likely and very likely to provide those. Those numbers show that the model is true. Obviously, your long-term customers will stay with you only if they trust you, but even when you only have one interaction with them, the quality of that interaction and the trust built as a result will generate outbound transferable trust, which will become the inbound transferable trust of your next customer, who will rely on it before making the purchase decision. This was Chapter 3 of the Trust Premium book. Now, have you ever heard the phrases, "you get what you paid for," or "there ain't such thing as a free lunch," or "if something is too good to be true, it probably isn't true"? Next week, I'll read Chapter 4 and talk about these maxims and how they play into the purchase decision. I will share insights from research and set the stage for a discussion of the trust premium and trust preferences in the following week. That's it for today. I hope this made you think a little differently about trust and trust premium. May trust be with you. This was The Trust Show. What would you like to know about trust and trustworthiness? Let me know and I'll answer it in a future episode. I would love to hear from you. Email me at yoram@thetrustshow.com. If you like this episode, subscribe to the show so you will automatically get notified when I release a new episode. Rate it. Write a review for this podcast because those ratings help not only you, but also others looking for podcasts just like this. If you're looking for more resources to learn about how to build trust, be trusted, or know who to trust, look up my workshops, online courses, books, or go to my website, trusthabits.com. And remember that the answer to these two questions will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? And can you trust me? Thank you for listening or watching The Trust Show.